Hello, dear friends. Welcome to the other episode of the podcast regarding AI in business. You are on the channel of AI Technologies. My name is Max. Today I have Alex Atkins from Sturdy.ai as my guest. And without further ado, I would love to say that it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Alex, how are you doing?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Doing great. It's been a while getting this planned and set up, so I'm stoked we actually get a few minutes here to chat a little bit more and hopefully entertain and educate the audience a bit.
Mhm. Cool. Sounds like an awesome plan. And even though the main topic is going to be business and AI, let's
Yeah,
kick it off easy. What's something
sure.
non-tech you've gotten obsessed with recently?
Sorry, say what I've
Y-
got obsessed with recently?
Yeah, is there something you have obsessed with recently which is not related to tech? Or maybe not recently, it also works.
Can it be related to tech? Maybe not tech, more hardware. I guess some software too. Sure. Yeah, I've been obsessed with traveling and filming with drones recently. That's been my number one. That's been my number one hobby, and I'll be publishing something hopefully soon. I just got back, as you know, and I'm still a little bit jet lagged. I just got back yesterday from a nice little trip over to the Amalfi Coast and did some drone piloting. And what I love to do is travel to beautiful places where I can capture some excellent content. It makes me look like a better drone pilot. And something that I've been doing since high school is actually editing videos. So what I do is I take that footage, really high quality footage from the skies, edit it, match it up to some music, and it's just sort of my happy place. Editing, which is very mundane to some and boring, is actually where I enjoy spending time. Kind of just cools me down, kind of like a meditation for me. And then I get to publish that footage for myself, but others seem to enjoy it as well. So yeah, I'd say that's my number one recent hobby and fascination.
Cool. Do you publish it on your YouTube channel?
I don't, I don't. That's a great. I used to. It's interesting. There's a lot of not to get too into the weeds. I published it on Instagram for the most part. I used to publish it on YouTube, but there's a lot of copyright issues with publishing other people's music on
Oh, yeah.
platforms like YouTube, which makes sense. However, I'm not using it for financial, gain. It's just to sort of, I guess, showcase others' wonderful musical tunes on YouTube matched to the footage I take. So I'm not totally sure why they don't love it, but I guess there's obvious reasons. So I guess what I have to do in the future is record my own music and then publish it on YouTube, and that way I can get away with the music and with the footage. So that's my workaround, my proposed workaround.
That's gonna be the creativity on steroids. So you create
Yeah, creative on
videos,
steroids. That's
you
the goal,
edit
man.
videos, you create the music for videos. So,
Yep, that's my goal. I used to play a lot of music when I was growing up. I still do play a little bit. I live in what's called the live music capital of the United States, Austin, Texas. And so I love to go to live music. I see a lot of live music, and I love to play live music. I just haven't done as much of it as I used to. But no, it's something I very much enjoy recording and filming and editing. So it makes sense to kind of bring it all together, I guess.
fantastic. Well,
For sure.
f- sometimes, even though the innovation in tech is always exciting, the day-to-day processes may feel mundane. And I think that's
Yeah.
when the ability to blend it with some more, I don't know how to say it, emotion triggering
Sure. Sure.
hobbies like
Absolutely.
playing music is
It's
perfect.
interesting. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think everybody, not to sort of get too much into my methodology around it, but I feel like I mean everyone has to have the ability to blend some sort of interesting or curiosity sort of into what many would consider the mundane tasks of the day. So I don't know about you. Sometimes I like to throw on some music, and whether it's new music that I'm discovering or new playlists that my friends are sending me, I typically work with headphones on because just having music present, really, regardless of what I'm working on, adds a very sort of, I guess, positive. It's a positive outcome, regardless of what I'm working on, if it's just some data entry, data cleaning, whatever it might be, the most boring of boring tasks, as you probably know, a little bit of good music goes a long way.
Totally. It makes it much more enjoyable, I would say.
Absolutely.
And you are Vice President of Marketing and Operations of Sturdy.ai, the
That's correct.
company which is at the forefront of AI and particularly solving customer retention issues in businesses.
Yep.
Overall, the
Absolutely.
system which detects certain warnings which the decision makers must and should act upon.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
if AI didn't exist, what do you think you would be doing now?
That's a good question. Yeah, no, if AI didn't exist, I can guarantee you Sturdy.ai would not exist either. What I would be doing, and this is this is going back to our earlier conversation, I would have done one of two things. One, gotten into video editing, which was always my favorite thing to do. I'm making film. My uncle and my father write scripts for films. That's always been a fascination of mine as well. I've always been into film. So I imagine I probably would have been doing that. Although a lot of the video editing capabilities that I can, take hours to do these days, the creative elements have been in some ways made obsolete and by AI. So I guess if AI was not around, I would have taken that path. I probably would still be in marketing though. I'd still probably be in growth because I've been doing growth long before AI was what it is today. Kind of funny enough, I think Sturdy was launched in 2019, building these language models, which we can get into in a minute. Prior to this AI boom, which happened shortly after. So I guess what we like to tell folks is we've been in the AI space before AI was cool, and really we didn't want to use AI to solve an issue. We had an issue to solve and found out that AI was the best way to solve that issue, if that makes sense. So we weren't just trying to figure out a way to use AI for AI's sake. It was, hey, we've identified that there are so many communications, right, between businesses and their customers that are going on, unstructured data, sort of massive space that is just left dark. And there is a way to solve for it, and it's AI. And that's the sort of the synthesis, applied AI techniques to these business vector LLMs that we've been working on. That was the best way to solve for this issue. So that's why we got into AI.
Oh, all right. So,
Yeah.
well, actually, this question is not on the script, but I'm now curious. So, the
Yeah.
the main problem which Sturdy AI is now solving is not what was the initial idea of the project. It was something what has come with the development of AI technology and the capabilities it has opened for
It's interesting.
different kind
Yeah.
of services. Is it right?
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. To kind of go back to the Genesis story, because every good company comes from a Genesis story, right? There was some sort of pain or issue that needed to be fixed or solved for. And the founders, my co-founders, Joel and Steve, and Nathaniel, kind of identified a while ago at their first or second venture. They've founded and sold a few different companies at this point. Newton Technologies, which was sold to the fourth largest payroll company in the country. They identified that there was this serious need to understand what lay sort of below the surface of customer sentiment, so they could identify whether or not customers were likely to churn or whether they were likely to stick around, right? And that was really difficult to do back in those days. So what they would do is they'd get a team huddled together. They'd spend hours and hours together, multiple people, to better understand the propensity of certain customers to stick around or to churn, and what kind of signals or insights were of those outcomes. So because of that, they realized there was no one system that aggregated all of the information and communications in a company. Okay, how do we go about doing that and building that? Bringing that all together so they can not only consolidate that information, but then act on and sort of provide this intelligence AI to read through all these communications, build out some insights from those, and then of course act on those intelligence so we can be more predictive, we can be more proactive instead of the reactive because once somebody is churned, they've already made the decision to churn or cancel. But if you can get ahead of that and you can find a way to fix for that, aim to be more proactive. That's what businesses need these days, in order to kind of grow their GRR.
I'm just a bit silent for a moment because what you have just said, I am quite big fan of Alex Hormozy, and
Sure. Yeah.
he, yeah, I just remember like he exactly saying that when customer has churned, it's only the symptom. That's what has happened because of
Exactly.
what has occurred maybe months
Months
before.
before.
And
Yep. Yep.
yeah, that's insane how valuable it is to be able to find out what is the cause of those issues which occur later and
Right.
which seem
Right.
inexplicable. Hmm.
Right. Yeah, they seem inexplicable. And let's be very clear, prior to AI, we just didn't have the computing power to be able to process this volume of information that was coming in, right? And one thing AI does very well is process vast amount of unstructured, information. Humans can't do that. It's impossible. I think to date, we've been looking into this. We've been processed over 2.4 billion words, many, many, many millions of conversations. Also, let's be clear, not Times or Wall Street Journal. We're talking about business language back and forth between businesses, right? So it's very specific business focused language model, vector based language models that we've been building. That allows them to be more, I guess, accurate when it comes to predicting and being able to detect specific language that is predictive of churn, predictive of cancellation, and other things that are incredibly important for the business, right? And that's why, like, that's the very specific little piece there that allows customers, allows businesses to be more proactive, save customers, build better products, better services, and ensure that they have the best team possible. And it's incredibly important these days, right? I think a lot of companies are struggling with net new acquisition. And when it comes to GRR and NRR, one of the biggest things we can be doing right now is retaining customers, keeping customers happy, ensuring that they have the right products, the right services, ensuring they felt heard. And that's something that a lot of customers don't necessarily feel when working with B2B tech and SaaS these days, I would argue. So that's my little rant.
I just wanted to add that it's very important to make the customer feel heard, not hurt. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
heard, not hurt.
Yeah.
That's going to be the takeaway from this call. Customers need to feel heard, not hurt. Yeah, and it's difficult. It really is. I mean, think about it this way, right? How many times have you reached out to a company and you've been waiting on a call line? You've heard the music, the drone for 15 to 20 minutes. Then some sort of automated voice comes on, or someone with zero personality speaks to you, sort of helps, I guess, in the way they can, then transfers you to somewhere else. I mean, customer centric business is on the rise. I say also within SaaS for sure, because we have better and easier ways to get in touch with support and success and experience teams. But there's still so much room. There's so much room for improvement, right? And in an age where we're really building out technology and all these different tools to help us, it's incredibly important to be able to consolidate all those different communication channels so we can build out the best single, means of helping customers so that they can see success. That's one of the most important things for us here at Sturdy, right? So to give you a little bit of a breakdown on Sturdy, and I'm sure you've done a lot of reading yourself, Max. In fact, based on your initial sort of outline of Sturdy, I think that's a very good simple way of putting it. Um, I can go into a little bit more around what Sturdy is and how Sturdy works. Unless we want to save that for later, we can go into some more of the questions that you've sort of prepared as well. So whatever direction you want to take it, I'm happy to go.
I'd say that that's sort of the most interesting part of our conversation. That's the way
Cool.
Sturdy AI works, and
Cool. Yeah.
I think one of the one of the biggest displays of that the problem which you are solving for
Mhm.
is actually relevant is the fact that you have recently secured the funding. And first
Sure.
of all, congratulations. And
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Yeah, it's validation for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
and secondly, mm, what are the plans? What how do
Yeah.
you want to deploy the capital, in which directions, and what improvements should we expect?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question, and thank you for the kind words. You know, just to quickly to level set, yes, it's validating when you see some more support, financial support for companies that are looking to help, detect revenue threats and be able to act on those before they become real threats. And I think when you see folks starting to support companies like Sturdy, you better understand that the acquisition channels for many companies are starting to slow, and that developing more muscle around NRR is should be a priority for many companies. And I want to emphasize also that my colleague Aaron Thompson just posted this yesterday on LinkedIn. Churn is not a customer success problem. It is a company problem, right? It is a multi-team issue. It starts with, it starts with SDR calls. It starts with product. It starts with onboarding. It starts with so many different teams that it can be assisting in retaining customers and building and growing, gross revenue and protecting NRR. So I think people are starting to come around to that and understand what that is and how important that is. And that's why we were able to secure some funding and a lot more support around what it is we're trying to build here. And to answer your question, I think, there's a lot of different ways to focus that spend. And I think a lot of it is go to market, right? We are in, interestingly enough, somewhat of a crowded space, but not a crowded space, right? We are in a crowded space in the sense that a lot of our indirect competition is leveraging AI as a buzzword, and everybody uses it now in marketing. And it's difficult, right? I think I posted not long ago that AI powered is everywhere. I looked at maybe 200 of the top B2B SaaS companies. I analyzed all of the content in the heading H1, H2 above the fold, and I was able to determine that I think it was, I have to double check my own post. It was a significant portion of those companies that were leveraging the word AI in their H1 or H2. And I think of those that mentioned AI, of the vast majority used AI powered. I find that really funny. What
Yeah.
is AI powered? And as you probably know, Max, AI is so broad in its use cases. It could, a lot of these companies are focusing on generative AI, right? Which basically is a small input, massive output, right? That's what generative AI does. And what we do at Sturdy is synthesis AI, which is basically a massive input and a small output, really small insight signal based output. And that's what we do, right? So I think generative AI was step one in the world of AI, and we're still kind of stuck talking about generative AI. And people mean generative AI when they mention AI; they don't really mean synthesis applied AI, and that's really where we sit. So it is difficult to differentiate ourselves along all the noise of AI. But when it comes to building what we've built in order to better listen to your customers, I'd say we are in a very unique space. It's not so much the competitive or competition element that's difficult for us. It's educating our audiences on what it is we do within a few seconds. And to kind of go into that a little bit more. So a lot of the focus is going to be on go-to-market. And in order to be successful with go-to-market, there's a few things we have to do. We have to be and create a very clear message with a lot of value and differentiation. And to differentiate is interesting and difficult, but it's also really important to do so in language that most people understand, right? And I've gone back and forth on this. I've tested this a lot, and I still use the word unstructured data because unstructured data is what we are processing, right? It is what we are collecting. All of the gobbledygook conversational information within emails, calls, transcripts, chats, tickets, so on and so forth. And that's, again, as I mentioned earlier, impossible for a human being to parse through and be able to extract all these insights, right? So what I'm really, really working on spending on, focusing my business on, understanding how we can differentiate, how we can sell this in a way that really clicks and makes sense. And as my old colleague and mentor Pep Laya mentioned, there's not many B2B companies these days that are selling in a B2C sort of, I guess, with a B2C focus, if that makes sense. Because we're still marketing human to human. So there's no reason why B2B needs to be B2B marketing, right? So for example, something that I've been working on recently is instead of saying, customer threat, intelligence or revenue threat intelligence, or customer intelligence, which is something we use a lot, thinking about like what is that pain point that folks that we are reaching out to are really struggling with. So an example here is surprises. People hate surprises, especially in the business context. Nobody wants to learn when they wake up one morning that their biggest customer canceled. That's a bad surprise. I will add, there are some situations maybe for a birthday. Outside of birthdays, surprises suck, is sort of what I'm getting at. You in a business do not want to be surprised, even if it's a good surprise, right? Even if it's a, hey, so and so is expanding their account. Well, that's great. That's awesome. But we should have known that they were going to expand their account prior to them expanding their account. And then we could have helped them expand it even more, right? And that's something that Sturdy does. So I'm going to stick to it. Surprises suck. And that's what I really want to start marketing more and more, because I think that will click, that will resonate. And that's a B2C. That is a human to human, tactic right there. It's not going back to the customer threat or revenue threat intelligence system. So anyways, that's probably a little bit more than you were looking for, but that's the goal, is to really put our foot, on the gas pedal and start to figure out the best messaging, and then just hit that messaging home over and over and over again to ensure that we are really hitting the pain points that our customers are experiencing, so that the next time a customer churns or cancels on them, they think, I remember that company Sturdy, they boasted that they can help us in that space. Time to give them a shot. So anyways, that's a little bit more about the focus over the next 6 months to 10 months.
That's an interesting take from what you have said, is that you can use Sturdy AI not only to prevent
Yep.
negative outcomes, but also to facilitate the things which you want to see more in your business, such as expanding
That's
accounts.
exactly right. Good call out, and I forgot to kind of touch on that. Yeah, it's a great point. One of our focuses, and again, that's why I kind of like to talk about NRR, protecting your revenue, right? But also growing your revenue. So we're not only helping you identify potential risks, but also opportunities. We can, based on language used in conversations, tell you whether someone is ready to expand an account that you may have missed otherwise, because why? You're human. We miss a lot of stuff.
Oh yeah.
A lot of times these emails that have these insights around expansion signals or potential, churn signals are read by the people that are least capable to identify those signals. For example, an account manager or a CSM or someone that may or may not be able to pick up on specific language. Because guess what? They probably have 10 customers or 10 accounts they're working with. They're probably getting hundreds of emails a day, chats, all this stuff. They're working constantly, right?
Yeah.
These little nuances in language that they might miss when aggregated, like most humans would miss that. But Sturdy does not miss that. Sturdy never misses it. Sturdy never sleeps, and it continues to learn faster than anything else how humans conversate and communicate via business, right? Emails, chats, all these, phone call transcripts, all these things. So they can continue to get better and better at picking up on these signals. We call them Sturdy signals, around expansion, around churn and cancellation, and around many things like service, and product. So anyways, that's a really good call out though, Max. We're not just here to protect, we're here to grow as well.
Cool. And do you use your own developed LLM to detect those signals, or do you leverage some open source AI model?
Good question. No, these I mean, so it's funny because like I thought you were asking at first, do we use it on ourselves? And yes, we use Sturdy on Sturdy. And I just love saying that. We use Sturdy on Sturdy to kind of just ensure that we are also drinking from the same pot. So we have built from the ground up 30 plus vector-based language models, right? And these models are, as I mentioned before, not just based on the language that you would read in social media or in the Times, right? These are very, very specific to business conversations and communications. And that's why they're so good at what they do. So they are built from the ground up, and they are not open source in any way. So just to kind of give you a background too, because like the language models are very important and they're core to our business. But I do want to talk about a couple other small things that are core to the business as well, because I think some of the pieces here, I kind of describe it as the three legs of the stool, and I'll get into that really quickly. But what we sort of discuss Sturdy as a lot is sort of this, I guess this sort of system of intelligence, which I mentioned earlier. And I'm trying to figure out other ways to potentially talk about it. But it's a system of intelligence that basically sits over um, all of your customer engagement tools. And so I mentioned a few of those before. That's like your email, your tickets, your chats, your phone call transcripts. That's like unstructured data, as well as your structured data, like your CRM and so on and so forth. And it helps you basically identify proactively all these like threats and potential areas for growth to improve GRR and protect NRR. So there's what so thinking of us using the unstructured data example. So think of us as sort of like a steady way of handling all that unstructured data. Um, and it's core to our thesis that like every business is collecting a absolute massive amount of digital breadcrumbs, right? Hiding in plain sight. They're all there, but you just can't ingest, or you can't just decipher them because humans were never meant to do that, right? Emails, tickets, chats, conversations, so on and so forth. So we've built an API middleware that basically integrates, consolidates, and synthesizes all of these disparate sort of silos, unstructured silos with some structured silos, so we can make it usable across teams. And once we've consolidated all that information, so the consolidation is the number one piece. And that's incredibly difficult, taking all of these different conversations and matching them up with structured information so we can match it to an individual or contact within a specific CRM. So, hey, this is Alex Atkins. He works at Sturdy. Oh, by the way, these are all of Alex Atkins' conversations across email, Slack, so on and so forth, phone calls, Zoom, and we can pull it into one specific space so you can match me with my structured information, my structured data, right? And that's incredibly important. So the consolidation is super important. And then we're getting to the part that you talked about, which is the AI, the models, right? So we built over 30 of these language models. And basically, as we've discussed, they classify and detect key customer signals. And again, these are Sturdy signals way beyond just sentiment. And I think that's where most people are getting stuck these days is sentiment. Are customers happy? Are customers angry? Are they frustrated? But what does that help when you don't know why? Why are customers frustrated? Why are they angry? Why are they sad? The why behind the what, and this is something I talk about all the time. If you don't know the why, how are you going to solve for the what? They're unhappy. Why? Why are they unhappy? Is their CSM not responding to them? Is there a product issue that's frustrating them? There's so many different reasons why they could be upset or frustrated or unhappy. And what Sturdy does is it goes way behind the sentiment and it answers the why behind the what, right? We look for issues like that are impacting your product, your pricing, your packaging, your promotions, as well as behaviors. And this is a fun one. Behaviors are so critical and impact your customers so much. And there's a couple that that I love talking about. One of which is overpromising. And overpromising, for example, is one of these signals where it's just like, all right, when your sales team is basically just like telling a new customer, prospective customer about all the cool things that your product or service can't actually do. And they join as a new customer, and the customer success team starts to talk to them. And that new customer in their growth and in their onboarding is like, we were told we could do this. The week we were told we could do this gets picked up by Sturdy as an overpromising signal. It goes into the system and it ensures that which SDRs or which AEs or which sales team members are lying to our customers about what our product can or cannot do. They need to be educated. We also need to make sure we're not overpromising in the future. So that's an example of one of these behaviors that Sturdy will pick up on. And this comes to life in an intuitive and in I'd say ever developing interface. But we also act as an intermediary, I guess you could say, analyzing every conversation. And I mentioned there's over 2 billion words to date, 2.4 billion, I think. I know, which is an insane amount of words to just basically identify specific signals. I don't want to get too much into the specific signals themselves. Let me just go ahead and say that these 30 signals are incredibly powerful. And beyond just providing these signals, I also want to emphasize that I know that each company is different and unique and has their own signals they want to build, which Sturdy's allows you to do as well. So yes, we have out of the box, and these out of the box are super, super helpful. And I guarantee you they will help save customers and they will help with your expansion. But there will be specific things that you need to look for in your own business. And Sturdy has the ability for you to become your own data scientist, where you can actually go in and build your own signals within Sturdy that are applicable to your own business, which I think is one of the coolest pieces. So that is the second leg of the stool. But the third is the power of action, right? And agentic AI, which we can talk about agentic AI a little bit more as well, because it's about taking these insights and it's about acting on them proactively to ensure that you're able to protect that revenue and grow that revenue, right? So synthesizing data, surfacing insights, and automating action. That's really what it is. Consolidate, intelligence, proaction. And that's what makes Sturdy as powerful as it is, right? And that is what's allowing us to keep growing, is being able to pull in all these disparate data sources, unstructured data, read through it, provide some intelligence on it, launch some signals on it, and then get the agentic AI to help folks and teams act proactively. And that's it in a nutshell.
And what kind of actions is are included
Thought you
in
never
the
asked.
for yeah.
Thought you never asked. Yeah. So there are specific actions, and I want to be very clear too about the biggest conversation that we have internally around what actions to take. How much do we help teams? Do we want to go as far as to launch a specific email nurture thread if a specific action is fired? No, that's not really what we're doing right now. What we're doing right now is ensuring that we get the information in front of the teams that need it so that they can proact on it. And our sort of argument, or I guess our thesis at the moment, is that these teams were hired because they're very good at what they do. And so they know what to do when specific things happen. So let's be very clear on an example or use case. We know that if there is an example of an action here is setting up an automation, for example. Hey, if so and so or XYZ company in this size or ARR or in onboarding stage, right? We can start to break down these by different stages based on the CRM data we're pulling in. So if this company's onboarding, if this company's over a certain ARR, a certain number of folks in the contact database, there's so many different ways we can spice and slice the data. So if let's use an example. If Sturdy or any other company in the onboarding phase with over 5 million ARR expresses, response lag, which is basically a CSM's inability to get back to that customer in a timely manner, or account manager's, inability to get back to that customer in a timely manner, response lag, unhappiness, value issues, and you can pair these signals up. You can create recipes, which is super freaking cool too. So you can add them or stack them. They don't just have to be one specific, LLM. They can be multiple LLMs. You create these recipes, right? These templates that basically infer cancellation. If these things happen, if these things are true, if and Slack the VP of customer success, so that alert will then reach the customer success if those thresholds are passed, allowing them to then act proactively on what's just occurred, right? So they know immediately if something's starting to go off the rails before it actually goes off the rails. Whereas let's talk about what would have happened in the past. Sturdy's onboarding. We are a company over 5 million ARR. We're on the onboarding stage, right? I've reached out to my CSM 5 times in the last few days because I'm confused in the onboarding stage. They have not responded, response lag. I'm failing to see that value that was promised to me. So maybe overpromising, value issue. And I'm confusion. I will then most likely churn because my onboarding experience has been terrible, right?
Yeah.
And nobody's getting back to me. I'm confused. The product is confusing to me, right? I'm not seeing the value that I anticipated. These are things that would go unnoticed to the VP of CS or the CCO. And I would probably end up churning. And when asked why Sturdy churned or Sturdy canceled in their onboarding stage, which is very difficult for a customer to come on, we got them, they're onboarding, and then they leave. That CCO or that VP of CS would have no idea why I would have left. They'd be completely in the dark. And the only person who possibly knows is that CSM or AE that was talking to me. And we'd like to think that they would be able to be honest and tell their CCO or VP why what occurred. But a lot of times people are trying to kind of cover their back, make sure that they are not to blame for what's occurred. And I'm not saying that's what Sturdy's all about. Sturdy's about ensuring that the right people get these insights and are provided with the action items before things go off the rails. That's the important piece, right? So that's an example of how Sturdy would save a customer in the onboarding stage before things get too crazy. and before that customer decides to churn because of the awful experience, product experience, service experience that they, that has occurred, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it absolutely does. So you rather prioritize delivering the important insights to the teams. So that's sort of the main action. Hmm.
That is the action, man. That is the action. And this isn't just about leaders receiving the most important information to save customers. As I mentioned before, there's so many things within a product that can be improved, right? We track things like bug reports, and we track things like confusion within a product, right? It's so important to have an intuitive product. It's so important that those teams receive objective information around what's going wrong with the product versus just some people complaining about it, right? And so you can build better products, then you're going to build better behaviors, right? There are certain things that you can really influence with Sturdy outside of just customer success teams, right? So or account management teams. And I will add here, there are certain companies that Sturdy is really good for. And something I've been discovering more and more is how helpful Sturdy is for services teams, any kind of service teams, because they don't have telemetry data. They don't have a product for the most part, right?
Yeah,
So they don't know, or they can't really infer how happy certain customers are. And not just go for sentiment, but like beyond sentiment, whether or not they're confused, whether or not they're upset, whether or not there are certain things that they're finding um, value issues in. You just don't have that information. You don't have any user sort of data when you're a service. So with the lack of telemetry data, we found that Sturdy is actually incredibly powerful, provides those eyes that they've never had before so that they can again proact on specific issues.
wow.
Yeah.
I uh,
Yeah, it's a big deal. It's crazy. It's wild. And again, these kind of things would not have been possible several years ago, right?
exactly.
But now we're at a point where we can we can make a massive revenue impact on companies simply by proaction through proaction, right? Versus reaction. And I think that's another big one. We were talking earlier about like how do we market this more in a human to human, surprises suck.
Yeah,
Something else I've been thinking a lot about is like proaction versus reaction. We've been acting reactively forever. We have these massive postmortems of why certain customers have left us. Why did they leave? We have to figure out why they left so we can try to fix those issues for future customers so they don't follow the same path. Why build such massive repositories of postmortem for businesses when you can actually get ahead of that reactive behavior and save the customers and then still build good sort of data around what frustrates or what upsets or what causes these situations in which customers churn. Now remember, only like 10 to 15% of customer churn is basically unsavable, right? It's beyond our ability or
yeah,
capability to to save. So when you look at that, like that's 80% of customers canceling that you could possibly stop from canceling. That's insane. That's a wild amount. And that's where people are not focusing enough time these days. And you know what? They don't need to get more bodies. They don't need to get more CSMs. They don't need to get more folks in on the customer side. They need to get intelligence layers that allow them to better understand how they can, go about creating the right behaviors and building the right products that are going to, help them boost that GRR and save and protect that NRR.
and businesses from what industry have you noticed use Sturdy AI the most?
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting. We've got quite a few customers at this point. It's been very interesting, especially over the last year. We started to see a lot of growth, and there's definitely different verticals.
Yeah,
It's we learn new things every day about how a Sturdy gets applied within the businesses that we are getting, that are purchasing Sturdy. So new use cases all the time, which I find to be so fascinating on how people are using Sturdy, but also the businesses that can use Sturdy. And I mentioned a moment ago that services businesses have been a really interesting sort of focus for us recently because of the lack of telemetry data and the amount of information that Sturdy provides that they've never had before. That's that for services. B2B SaaS is where we initially started focusing a lot of our efforts because of a few things. One, technology companies like to leverage new technology typically, especially startups that we find to be unicorns or sort of off shooting for the moon have typically found that they can start to leverage other new technologies to accomplish those goals. So B2B SaaS has been a big focus for us. to date. There are other industries like we have some you know use cases and some case studies rather in other verticals I would have never thought about. Like I think we are in a specific sort of. I'm trying to think of a good example here. Medical devices company, which is really funny, right? To think that we have this medical device company that still distributes to other B2B, other companies, but is able to leverage the data that we provide. And they saw value in this when you would sort of assume that a lot of these sort of like old school medical devices companies and other management, material companies might be a little bit more reluctant to new technology and new AI. And they've seen massive value in what we've been building, right? And they're an excellent customer for us. So there are other verticals. It's B2B specific and focused at the moment. But typically we find that you have to be in a bit of a sweet spot in the sense that you have to have a CRM or a structured data source to be able to match your structured data, like your contact information, to the unstructured data. So you have to have sort of a CRM. You also have to have email because that's our sweet spot, company
Yeah, yeah.
email. And then you can layer in other things like Zendesk, Jira, ticketing systems, your Zoom calls or Google Hangout calls, those transcripts, your chats like Slack, which has been a huge door opener for us because Slack is a dark hole. Slack is difficult, and a lot of customers are engaging with their customers on Slack these days, and it's very difficult to extract all that information, conversation and connections, and then pull it in and do what we do with Sturdy. So that was a big recent upgrade for Sturdy, is being able to work with Slack and integrate with Slack, integrate with Jira. So I'd say these companies that fit the bill for that are ripe, prime for Sturdy to test Sturdy
Yeah.
out and identify customer threats and opportunities really quickly.
I remember that you said that there is an ability for users of Sturdy to create their own signals. Is it right?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Okay, so I have this one question on the list, so it will make sense.
Sure. Sure.
Mm, what was the most fascinating signal ever
That
triggered
somebody's built.
in Sturdy? Yeah.
That's a good one. I think, I have to do some more research on the most fascinating. I bet there's some ridiculously cool use cases. I have a couple. I've looked at a couple different ones, so I can give you some examples. A lot of folks like to track the competitor mentions, right?
Uh-huh.
Specific competitor mentions within language, and there's a few different reasons to do that. Well, I was kind of hoping you all were going to build this specific element of the product out because your competitor XYZ has been doing this. So you can have track competitors. I think that's a really good use case. And of course, if you're a business, you have specific competitors, and we don't offer that competitor specific language model out of the box. So you're going to want to build a competitor mention. So that's an example. Also, you know, we have a happy sentiment signal, but there are other signals that you can build around your own brand that help you understand whether your brand is mentioned in a very positive light. And what can you do with those? You can automate use cases for the marketing team, testimonials, potential expansions. So those are a couple specific use cases around businesses and mentioning of businesses' names or products, specific product names as well. And those are reasons why companies would want to use their own custom signals. And I do want to mention again how cool these custom signals are, because again, nobody else offers anything like that, and no business is the same. Two businesses are the same. So the 30 out of the box LLMs that we provide aren't going to be potentially as useful to one company as they are to another. And you're going to want to be able to build specific custom signals that only matter to your business. And the fact that you can do that, and then you can start to train them and have them working within a few days or weeks, that's incredibly helpful for you and for your business. And then you can match those within your automations with other out of the box LLMs that might be able to provide an insane amount of information so you can proact. So again, it's a powerful system. It's one of the most powerful AI systems I've been able to see. And of course, I'm tracking this stuff all the time. I'm trying to figure out where potential competition exists, and understand their messaging, because that's also super important, right? We started, and when we started, Max, there was maybe one or two, maybe one or two other companies doing something like what we were doing. And they had never figured out to do it in a way that we did it, I think, and that's, not to be too cryptic, but that's just something that we were kind of focusing on. It was not as much of an issue as, hey, is so and so better at us at differentiating their content or their messaging or being more, I guess, valuable or clear in their messaging. It was more of like, how do we stand alone in the space and educate an audience that has no idea what we do in a way that captivates, provides value, but also does so within a few seconds. That's really difficult to do, right? And that's where it comes back to like getting on calls like this, right? And having conversations around this, because it provides a little bit more of a platform to have a long form conversation around what it is we're doing versus you go to a website and you see the top two lines, you have less than 10 seconds to understand what it is and whether or not it's valuable for you and whether or not it answers or solves for the pain point that you're looking for, right? You have
Yeah.
very limited time with that kind of stuff.
So you would say that one of the most popular custom signals is tracking of the mentions of particular
Competitors, I would say
competitors.
competitors, your own brand mentions products, specific product lines,
Yeah.
right? Because one of our customers, and this is such a cool use case, one of our customers built a custom signal around one of their own product lines. And they had a hunch that specific product lines were causing more issues. And they were able to test out that thesis by basically matching. I think it was, let's call it their ProSec, product. I think is a good example. Match, and that's their own custom signal. Mentions a ProSec product with confusion, unhappiness, and then several other layers. And they were able to determine that one of their product offerings was causing 84% of customer confusion.
Wow.
One. And they would have had no idea that was the case prior, right? How would they have ever figured out that this one little product line was causing that much customer confusion? What does that have? Customer confusion leads to customer frustration, which leads to customer unhappiness, which leads to customer cancellation and churn, right? Eventually, if it starts to grow out of control. Um, and unfortunately, they would have had no idea that it was that one little product line causing all those issues. Even after those customers leave, very few of them provided, an accurate reason of why they're leaving. They could have lost so many customers because of this one tiny little issue, one tiny little product, right? So that's a good example, I think, also of a custom signal outside of just sort of, mentions of competitors or your own brand.
Okay. Okay. That's incredible because
Yeah,
again, that's that exact moment when you get that cause, which then would lead to some inexplicable churn. But yeah,
totally,
now
totally.
it's
And that's
it's
the
good.
issue. The frustration behind the inexplicable churn. Why'd they
Hmm.
leave? Oh, this is something else I want to talk about for a second. And I don't want to harp too much on this, but I'm going to mention it because why not? We got a few minutes left. I would argue that there are so many tools and systems, antediluvian sort of antiquated systems out there that basically provide a score, health score. And we call it sort of like the watermelon, like, green on the outside. They're green, they're in the green, their health score is in the green, but on the inside it's red, right? What you can't see is that these customers are most likely going to churn, but you don't have the systems or the intelligence to let you know why, or even that they will churn, right? So one thing that we've been doing a lot with customers recently is sort of looking at their database of customers, if they're willing to say, hey, who's like the most green? Who are the most happy in your system according to your customer success platform, your CSP, or whatever else you're using to determine customer happiness or satisfaction? And then we run those customers and customer conversations through Sturdy to determine whether or not they're actually in the green or if they're actually not. Things that they would never know. Oh, this customer that you thought was a green, thought was a red, they're going to cancel most likely within the next 2 months. And you would have never known. And better yet, you would have never known why. And that's why it's important to get sturdy. And this is not
Okay.
a commercial, by the way. I'm just telling you, we're running through a use case here. That's all
Uh,
that is.
well, YouTube gives copyrights on including the music in your videos,
Yes,
but
yeah, no. I'm gonna write a really good tune for it. I'm
yeah,
gonna write a really good tune for it. It's gonna be super catchy. Like
cool.
all those other. I was gonna say one thing I'd have loved to do is create a nice little jingle for Sturdy.
I think
Jingles, man.
yeah.
They stick around. They're always in your head. So, anyways, that might be the best way to market it. And then in that case, yes, I won't have to worry about copywriting with other
I
people's
already
things.
imagine there is the phrase "surprises suck" with jingles.
Surprises suck. We'll look into it. We'll look into it. I've been looking everywhere for it, but I mean, I plan on using it as much as possible. Surprises are scary. Surprises suck. If you have any other good ones, let me know, and I'll throw you a bone. But yeah, I would love to use the phrases that I think are going to generate the most curiosity, potential, discussion, and honestly, I don't mind if people argue. I want people to argue with me. Conversation's great. Arguments are a pretty good thing when it takes place in effect. I'd say in a polite manner on a platform like LinkedIn, right? We should get into more conversations on LinkedIn that will boost engagement. So if you have any if you have anything you want to talk about on that, around surprises not sucking, let me know and we can start the conversation on LinkedIn. But I'm sure some people are going to say surprises are great. I could not disagree more. And unless we're talking about birthdays, again, going back to that. And even then, have you ever been surprised on a birthday? Because it's terrifying. Just saying.
I think I am, of course, I am a unique snowflake in this case. I actually like surprises, but definitely
Oh, see,
not
there
in
we
the
go,
things
man.
like
There we go.
business.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there might be more of you than we know. I'm just going purely off my own. And also my wife hates surprises. So I'm like, this household hates surprises. I imagine everybody hates surprises, but clearly that's not correct. So this is why we do our research before we throw out our campaigns.
Hmm.
But yeah, no, it's not a bad thing to love surprises, man. It's okay.
That's. I think we could be talking for another hour, maybe two, maybe even three. But
Yeah, I mean, we can jump into all of our favorite topics of conversation. We can go into surprises for at least an hour alone. But yeah,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
alas, yeah, no.
I wanna just address our viewers, say thank you very much for your attention. In case you also want to not miss out on the extremely important signals of your business, then follow the link in the description below. It's on the top. Also, in case you wanna surprise Alex with the message about surprises, then follow. I think it's gonna be the second link, which will lead
Perfect.
to
Please,
Alex's
please provide all
LinkedIn.
that feedback.
Yeah,
Yep, yep.
and
Perfect.
of course, subscribe to not miss the interesting conversations like this one. Press the like button. And do you wanna add anything else?
No, I mean that'd be great, sort of great sign off there, Max. It's been a great time chatting with you. I really enjoy your questions. They're really well thought out, and that's so appreciated. And yeah, just for anybody who's interested in following up with Sturdy.ai, it's just Sturdy.ai. If you agree that surprises suck for the most part, specifically in business, and you're looking for ways to be more proactive with your customer engagement, ensuring that you're capturing every single conversation and connection that's occurring in the business, boosting GRR and protecting NRR, give us a shout. We're friendly folk, and we'd love to talk to you more about it. It's below, right below that second link around surprises. Check us out.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, and see you in the
Thanks,
next
y'all.
videos.